Welcome to the Viking Age podcast, the official podcast of thevikingage.com. I am Chris Schad, writer at the Viking Age, as well as Bring Me the News and Zone Coverage. And I am joined by Adam Patrick, who is the managing editor of the Viking Age. We do this every Monday and Thursday night right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe so you never miss a new video. And if you do, we have you covered in audio form with a podcast on Apple and Spotify. Adam, the Vikings are in the playoffs. We are excited. We are fired up. Sunday, they will host the New York Giants. Before we start, I want to ask you and shut my door because it's I forgot to shut it during the countdown when I do everything to get ready for the podcast. I should have done about 5 minutes ago. What is your favorite wild card moment? It can be Vikings. It can be whatever. What is your favorite wild card moment?
Let's see. Vikings wise, I think you got to go with the last time they beat the Giants, which was 1997. Randall Cunningham. They came back from their trailing to beat the Giants on the road. And no one really thought they were going to do that. So that was fun, Vikings wise, beating the Giants in 97 in the wild card. And then NFL wise, I think you got to look back at the Tebow Steelers walk-off when he was with the Broncos. That was pretty memorable. I think the T.O. catch happened against the Packers, where so that's always good to see the Packers lose. And then, of course, the Music City Miracle. You can't leave that out with the Titans and Bills. Titans getting that crazy play on the kickoff return to win the game. I think that's always going to be that's got to be number one until somebody else does better, right?
Well, you did have, and this is probably before our time, the Houston Oilers. Was it the Oilers that came back or was it the Bills?
Bills came back to beat the Oilers.
Yeah, the Bills came back to beat the Oilers way back when. We were too young to remember it. That big comeback, obviously one of the best in NFL history. I believe the double doink by Chicago was a wild card game off the goalpost and off the crossbar and no good. As Viking fans that Bears team was really weird because I felt like they were going to go on a run because I don't know, every once in a while there's a horseshoe team for the Bears where it's like they have a horseshoe up their ass. This is weird. And of course, like Viking fans are probably going to disagree and like hate me on this. Well, first of all, I'll mention the good one. I mean, maybe the Saints win. I mean, I know a lot of people. A lot of people look at that with very fond memories. I look at it as the game that extended the Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman regime 2 years longer than it should have been, and Kyle Rudolph pushing off in the end zone. But
legally,
yeah. They never called it. So
right.
What is Jason Kelsey's rule? Like, you know, people
they
will be like,
they
well,
didn't
they should have called
so.
whatever. They didn't call it, so it's not.
Right. There you go.
But you know, this is kind of ass backwards. One of my favorite moments was the shank at the bank, Blair Walsh, because of what happened after the game. I went to the game. It was cold. It was awesome. Bud Grant came out in a t-shirt. Yep. We went back to the bar dejected, and a group of Seahawks fans bought us a couple of beers at the bar, and we wound up partying with them until my friend's girlfriend, now wife, dragged us out of the bar angrily because we wouldn't come out because she was picking us up. That is probably my favorite wild card moment just because of the sheer absurdity of it. Like a missed 27-yard field goal. And a lot of Viking fans were so angry at that moment, but like these Seahawks fans, super nice. They're like screaming. I'm like, what, you bandwagon fans? You just like the Seahawks? And they're like, we're from Aberdeen, man. Yeah. So
speaking of the Seahawks, the Beastquake too. Marshawn Lynch that run against the Saints.
I remember being in college, and I think I had to call a game in Colfax, Wisconsin, which don't ask me where it is. It's in the middle of nowhere. But I remember coming home, throwing a Papa Murphy's pizza in the oven, which is always money. Papa Murphy's want to sponsor us. I don't know. But Yeah, throwing that in the oven, turning around and seeing Marshawn Lynch just like, somebody going to tackle him or what? And nobody ever tackled him. I think he grabbed his nuts on the way into the end zone too.
He did.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. Will we have another wild card moment on Sunday though?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, it feels that way with the Vikings playing so many close games this year. And actually, the Giants were in more one-score games than the Vikings this year, believe it or not. They were in 13, and the Vikings were in 11. So, sounds like it's gonna come down to a 62-yard field goal this time.
I don't know who wrote that, but I know you posted it where it was like they're gonna kick a 62-yard field goal.
Yeah, I think it was in the Athletic. I think it was in the power rankings.
Kick a 62-yard field goal. Brandon Ayuk's going to lose the ball and fumble out of the back of the end zone at the goal line. And then Dak Prescott's going to kneel down at the one, which would be hilarious because if Vikings played the Cowboys, that would be at US Bank Stadium, which it would just be awesome because everybody would be screaming their heads off like, oh my God, you know.
And then what happens in the Super Bowl?
45-point loss. I don't know. So, like, here's the thing with the Vikings playoff run, and maybe you're a little bit different than me. I just want to see them get there, but I know that if they get there, I'm going to be like, just win this thing. Like, you're so close right now. Let's just win this thing. I've never seen the Vikings in the Super Bowl, but I'm not going to sit there and go moral victory if they get their ass kicked by 45 points in the Super Bowl. I'm going to be upset.
Yeah. Well, you look at the Broncos when they had Peyton Manning and that when he first got there and he was good and he was throwing like 50 touchdowns. Then they played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl in New York. Remember that? That was weird. That was weird. And they got blown out, and everyone's like, "Oh, that was terrible." And then 2 years later, they came back to the Super Bowl and they won it. So it's not just because you lose in the Super Bowl doesn't mean it's always bad. Just especially for a young team with a young coach like the Vikings, like getting the Super Bowl would be huge. Like it shows you what you're capable of with this regime, with this coaching staff. So like it would give them confidence going into next season and the year after. So if they were to get blown out by 45 points, it would be very easy to handle. But the game would be over by like halftime and you'd be like, all right, well, let's let's drink a little more. But yeah, it would also be very fitting because of the way the Viking season has gone. Who would blow them out by that much? Because they beat the Bills. It have to be like the Bengals or the Chiefs, probably, right?
Probably. Joe Burrow just smokes as Justin Jefferson sitting on. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase just celebrating a Super Bowl title while Justin Jefferson's just like,
yeah.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Sunday. Kickoffs at 3:30 Central Time, maybe a little bit later, maybe a little bit before. I don't really know how that works. Fox's A-Team is on the call, which is Kevin Burkhardt, Greg Olsen, Aaron Andrews, and Tom Rinaldi. Vikings favored by 3 points over the New York Football Giants. And as you mentioned before, the Vikings previously defeated the Giants 27-24 on Christmas Eve, thanks to a 61-yard field goal from Greg Joseph as time expired. Getting into this game, and I took a deep breath because I don't really know where to start because there's not any like big juicy storylines coming in. Like it's just kind of like two teams where nobody really knows what to think about them because they've been in so many one-score games. The Giants are 2-5-1 in their last 8 games after starting 7-2, but people seem to think that they're going to pull this off, and a big reason why is the offensive line. Garrett Bradbury returned to practice on Wednesday in a limited capacity. The plan is to ramp him up as the week goes along. And here's the question I did not think I would be asking at the beginning of the year. How vital is getting Garrett Bradbury back to the Vikings' chances of winning on Sunday?
I think as much as we want him to be back and have that, the starters back, especially with Brian O'Neill out, I don't think it's as vital, especially with Blake Brandel being able to come back, because Chris Reed he's been in there, he's been getting more practice reps, and he started the game for against the Bears last Sunday, so he's getting some real action. And I think the Vikings coaching staff this year is smart enough to develop a plan where if Garrett Bradbury isn't going to play, they're not going to They're going to figure out plays to run where pressure up the middle isn't going to affect the outcome of each play as much as it would if Bradbury was to go down in the middle of a game. I think they'll be very prepared for something like that. And they've seen the Giants already, so they know what to expect pretty much. Like, I don't think the Giants are going to not blitz as much as they did before. They might try and blitz less people to try and cover Justin Jefferson or TJ Hawkinson a little bit better in this game. But I don't think it's as vital as we're maybe making it seem to be, because Bradbury's been out for a while, and they've still been able to do pretty well. I don't think Garrett Bradbury being out against the Packers was the reason why they gave up a kickoff return and a pick six and all that stuff. So it would be nice to see him back. You also probably want him back, and you don't want him to get re-injured and then have him not available against the Niners. You'd probably rather have him against the Niners or whoever goes in the next round, whether it's the Cowboys or the Bucks, if the Seahawks pull off the upset in the first round. So it'd be nice, but I think the Vikings will still be okay if Bradbury doesn't play on Sunday. But he hasn't practiced in a while, so him just even practicing this week is a good sign.
I think the Vikings just need to be careful because, Garrett Bradbury, you look at his name and you're like, oh, he's a starter. Like, he's a very important piece. And if you can get him back and he's 100%, that's great. He's not going to be 100%. That back is so messed up right now that if you are bringing him out there, you're putting them out there at like 75%. So what is better? Is it 100% Chris Reed, who may or may not know the snap count, or is it Garrett Bradbury at 75%? Probably Chris Reed, to be honest. And the Giants did attack Austin Schlottman in that December 24th game. They blitzed on over 50% of their snaps against Kirk Cousins, who did very well against the blitz. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm more worried about right tackle because losing Brian O'Neill is a big deal. They have plenty of edge rushers. They got Azeez Ojulari. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. The Snow Angels dude, Dexter Lawrence in the middle, Leonard Williams. I mean, they could go
Loomis.
To that. Yeah. Did I say Dexter Loomis?
No, I just said it because I feel like we always think of that whenever you say Dexter Lawrence.
It's always at the tip of our tongues as wrestling nerds because it's Dexter Lawrence instead of Dexter Loomis, who's stalker / serial killer. I would take him at right tackle right now.
Yeah.
Because I think they'd probably snap the ball and he'd like whip out a knife and be like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" Like that's weird, man. Just don't do that. But yeah, I mean, Thibodeau on the edge, Ojulari on the edge, like they're gonna slant towards the right side because they're gonna attack Ed Ingram, they're gonna attack who's ever at center, and they're gonna attack who's ever at right tackle. Where it sounds like Brandle's trending towards playing. Is that correct?
Yeah. He's pretty much. Kevin O'Connell's made it pretty clear that he's going to play on Sunday.
So they'll have that back, which will be good. I mean, I think Oli Udoh is a better tackle than he is a guard, personally. But still, I think Brandle's a little bit of an upgrade because he's your primary backup at either tackle position. But the pass rush, it scares me. And that high blitz rate, it's the highest in the NFL. Kirk did a very good job against it last time. It was an 85 point. Actually, he had a 111.6 passer rating against the Giants, but 85.9 against the blitz this season. That's 34th among qualifying quarterbacks this season. Can the Vikings stop this defensive line, and how can they do it?
I mean, they had some plays in the last game, in the first meeting against the Giants, where they were able to kind of defeat the blitz by just because if you're blitzing that many players, you're going to have guys in single coverage, including Justin Jefferson, including TJ Hawkinson, and they took advantage of that fully. And it was a big reason why they were able to beat the Giants because those two guys, Jefferson and Hawkinson, went nuts because they had a lot of single coverage. Are they going to do that again? I would advise against it if I was the Giants, but it's their scheme. It's what they're used to. They might try and blitz some different people, maybe, and be like, you know what? Let's put Adam Thielen in single coverage and see if he can beat us. I'd rather try that than Justin Jefferson. I'm curious to see how they try and stop Justin Jefferson because they didn't in the first game. But yeah, to beat that blitz is just Cousins going to get hit a lot. It's just going to they're probably not going to be able to stop it that much. Their offensive line is better this year, but it's not. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a top 10 group, especially with the injuries that they have now. But the return of Irv Smith could be a little sneaky way to help that, get him in there as a blocker, and then when you want to run some play action, you get him involved. But I don't think they're going to be able to fully stop it, but I feel like they had some solutions to it before. I feel like maybe some more rollouts would be better for this game for Kirk to get hit less because he got pounded a few times against the Giants. So trying to avoid him getting pounded in the ground again would be a good strategy to have this time. But I don't think they're going to be able to fully stop it, but they have some ways that they can beat it. So we'll see.
I think the best way to beat it is by running the football. And I'm not talking about like a Mike Zimmer run all the damn time type of offense. Yeah, up the gut, right up the middle. I think it's going to come down to Dalvin, maybe even Alexander Madison. First meeting, Dalvin Cook only had 14 carries, 64 yards, but he averaged 4.6 yards a clip. Alexander Madison, 4 for 17, 4.2 yards. The Giants defense is allowing 5.2 yards per game against the rush this season. So if they can, I mean, somebody has to make them care. I mean, for game one, it was TJ Hawkinson, right? You mentioned it a little bit. Maybe it's Adam Thielen this time. Maybe Adam Thielen jumps into the wayback machine and he has a big game. It's possible. I mean, I'm not gonna rule it out. I've been the harshest on Adam Thielen throughout the year. But I mean, if they forget about him, he had a touchdown last week. So, and granted, that was the Bears, but
I'd give KJ Osborne higher odds of having a big game.
Well, and I was about to say that. I think Osborne's another. You know what I'm saying, though. I think Thielen, Osborne, somebody needs to step up outside of Justin Jefferson. Because I think Jefferson's going to get his because they have. The Giants are going to have Adoree Jackson back. That's what it's sounding like. He's kind of pulling the whole Cam Dantzler. I don't really know if I will or not. If he's breathing, he's probably going to play, especially against Justin Jefferson, because that is a player that is very important to the Giants defense. Otherwise, they're going to blitz all the time like they did in the last game. Xavier McKinney should also be back. They've said it's all hands on deck in New York right now. So I think that is going to be a major key. Another key that's been kind of tossed about is the experience on both sides of the ball. A lot of players on the Vikings haven't had playoff experience. Justin Jefferson's one of them. Dalvin Tomlinson, just to name a few. But the Giants have like nobody with experience. Right. So how much do you think it matters?
Oh, I think it matters a lot because it's different. It's a different vibe. It's a different setting. The pressure's much higher. It's win or go home. Your record doesn't matter anymore. Everyone's 0-0. So the Vikings have guys like Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter, Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, all these guys that have been in the playoffs, played at a high level, gone to a conference championship game or more. I think that matters a lot, especially with all the close games that they've played this year. This game's probably going to be close too. Like the pressure is going to be high. Daniel Jones might feel a little bit more pressure, might be a little bit more nervous, cause him to turn the ball over a little bit more. The same could be said for Kirk Cousins too. We don't know until we get in there because he's only played in what? Three playoff games. So it's not like he has a huge amount of experience, but still he's been in those high pressure situations all year long and he's excelled. So we would expect him to do that. Real quick, what would your guess be for Adam Thielen's averages for catches and yards since week 13?
Catches and yards?
Yeah.
2 for 23.
Ooh, that's very close. 2.7 catches per game for 27 yards per game since week 13. So either
Why do you think that is?
I think
Like,
they're just realizing like KJ Osborne's like even if they just get him the ball in the same spot, he's got a better chance of getting more yards after the catch. TJ Hawkinson's involvement has increased every week. Thielen just he's not what he used to be. I don't know if he's hobbling this year with like a knee injury or anything like that, but he's not the same guy that he used to be, and he's kind of being phased out. And I think the Vikings are realizing that he's still good for a first down catch here and there. I mean, he caught the red zone catch last week. Still can do that. Can get open. He can get open in like short areas. I still feel like he's got value like in the red zone, things like that. But they gotta stop with like the deep shots to him down the field.
yeah.
Like what? That's
Well, in
it's not
last
gonna
game
work.
too, they had the reverse, but I think that was just to throw something on tape, just to
Yeah,
put it in the back of
yeah,
their mind. Like,
yeah.
yeah, we're not going to actually do this in a game that matters,
But
but here you
back to
go.
experience. Experience matters. It's gonna be a factor in this. And then you look at the coaching staff. That's Kevin O'Connell. Do you account for his experience last year with the Rams going all the way to the Super Bowl and winning it? Does that count? Brian Dable, he was with the Bills and they were in a bunch of playoff games and conference championships as well. So, but not as a head coach. So it's different. So we will see how much that is a factor. But yeah, I think the Vikings, in terms of experience, the Vikings have the advantage. And in the playoffs, in close games, sometimes that matters because the fewer mistakes usually you make in the playoffs is the reason why most teams win.
And Dable also never been a head coach in a playoff game. Been in plenty of playoff
Yeah,
runs.
yeah,
He is a Nick Saban disciple as well.
yep.
Alabama, winning a couple nationals. But we could also play that same card with Dalvin Tomlinson, who was also at Alabama.
Yeah.
The last playoff game, or one of the last playoff games Justin Jefferson played, he had 4 touchdowns. Granted,
That's
Joe
true.
Burrow was his quarterback in
That's
the
true.
greatest college offense ever assembled, maybe at LSU. But
Ed Ingram.
Yeah, Ed Ingram was there as well. I mean, they've been in playoff settings. It's a little bit different in the NFL, but I think it's going to be the same thing. Which player with playoff experience do you think makes the biggest impact on Sunday? Because the Vikings do have a lot of players with playoff experience. You got Adam Thielen. We talked about him a little bit. You got Zadarius Smith, who's been in a couple of playoff runs. Daniel Hunter, that entire core of the 2017 defense. Which player that has been in the playoffs before do you think will have the biggest impact?
Based on his performance this year, I think you would have to go with Patrick Peterson. I think he's just come up in the clutch a lot this year, either with interceptions or pass breakups, and I think the same will be true on Sunday. I think he might have lost a step here with like his quickness or his speed, but he's made up for that with his smarts. There's been so many times where he's kind of just ran the route for the receiver before they even get to their break or whatever, and he breaks on the ball and he gets the pick. So I would expect Patrick Peterson to come up with some plays, and he's going to be motivated. He was jawing a little bit back and forth with Isaiah Hodgkins in the first game against the Giants, and he's going to be maybe a little more motivated to be like, "Come on, kid, you're not gonna do that again." So be interesting to see that. Lack of experience wise, I'm curious to see how someone like Duke Shelley does, because he's been playing well. Does that continue into the playoffs when the pressure's higher? And then Harrison Smith, he's going to be back there hanging out. Daniel Jones isn't going to see him or something. He's just going to pop up and like grab an interception. I think like that's highly likely. But probably Patrick Peterson the most for sure.
It is interesting you mentioned the secondary because that is another big matchup. I think Isaiah Hodgkins. I don't know.
Tomato.
He had a monster game against the Vikings the first time around. Richie James as well. They had a lot of drops. Like I think that's what the Giants are kind of banking on in this game is that we made a lot of mistakes last night. Hodgins, my apologies.
Oh, I said
Isaiah. Yeah, Isaiah Hodgins. they're kind of like, well, bounce here, bounce there, bounce whatever. Mike Zimmer stuff. Sorry, Mike Zimmer stuff. Like you still have to make the plays. And here's the other thing in that game. The Vikings were starting to do their little rotation thing to keep guys fresh for the playoffs.
Yep.
They're not taking
They're not
Harrison Smith out for a drive. They're not going to take Eric. They are going full bore. I mean, I would debate maybe you still want to take Jordan Hicks out every now and then, replace him with Brian Asamoah. But I mean, this is balls to the walls playoff football. Yeah. And I think that we're going to see everybody in there. Player without playoff experience, I think you mentioned him a little bit before. I think it's going to be, I'll give you two, Vikings related. I think KJ Osborne could have a big one. I mean, he's got 30 catches, 388 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then you have Irv Smith Jr.
Yep.
And I don't know, they used a couple of 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, 1 running back at times against the Bears. I don't know, again, if that's something they just want to put on tape to screw with the defense or whatever. Yeah. But I think, Kirk loves having that nookie blankie security blanket close. And I mean, TJ Hawkinson and even Irv Smith Jr. to an extent can catch and take the ball a little ways down the field. So I think that adds a little bit more punch to those plays where like Johnny Munt or like Kyle Rudolph would just like fall over as soon as they get the ball. I think that, if they decide to leave Irv Smith open, there's going to be opportunities for him to make plays. And I know he's made a lot of mistakes. The drop in Philadelphia is fresh in everybody's mind. But I mean, they can use him as kind of a deterrent. And that's another player. I mean, this is one of the few teams in NFL history that had 4 different receivers with 60 catches this year, which is bonkers. So, I mean, they can, and they're going to do it. They're going to load up everything to stop Justin Jefferson. But if that is their game plan, like 100%, we're going to take away Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins is going to find other guys, and the Vikings are going to move the football. So I think it's going to be in the passing game, and I think it'll be either Irv Smith Jr. or TJ Hawkinson. All right. Yeah. KJ Osborne.
KJ Osborne. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Kyle Rudolph. He caught his 50th touchdown last week.
Congratulations.
It was like one of his only catches all year, but it was a touchdown for the Bucs. He's in the playoffs with the Bucs, back in the playoffs. Don't know if he'll play. But yeah, like Duke Shelley, Dalvin Tomlinson, Christian Darrisaw, Justin Jefferson. Madison was in the playoffs. He was with the Vikings in 2019. So he was there. Do you think Jalen Naylor will be a factor at all, or did he just benefit from a little extra playing time at the end of the year?
I think he was one of those rotational guys. They could put him in every one.
Couple snaps. I think he's higher on the depth chart than Rager right now. I would say that. I don't think Rager's going to be on offense in the playoffs. Can't take that risk.
He's got those thighs, man.
Was this the game? Was this the game? Or no, it was against the Colts when Rager just like stopped on those routes. They kind of blur together. But yeah, they're going to need guys to step up who haven't been in the playoffs before. I will be curious about Justin Jefferson because he hasn't been on this stage, but he's come up big against the Bills, and some other big games as well. So I would expect him to, especially at home. He seems to play very well at home compared to on the road, unsurprisingly. So I'm excited.
I'm very excited as well because the Giants also said, and I know this isn't on the outline, but a little audible here. I believe it was Nick Gates said, it's not that loud in US Bank Stadium.
Yeah.
And then they walked it back and they're like, okay, it was loud. And like, too late. Buddy. They're gonna, the first drive, and I will be there on Sunday. The first drive, know, they're putting that quote on the big ass screens at US Bank Stadium. Be like, it wasn't that loud. And it's kind of like the scene in Anchorman. You're from San Diego. You get this. Where he says, go fuck yourself, San Diego. And then the guy in the bar is just like, nobody says that about my city. Nick Gates, your ass is grass. And people like me will just scream until they're sore the next day. Here's my theory on.
Wasn't that game on Christmas Eve too?
It was on Christmas
Eve. So you're not getting the full experience from Vikings fans anyways. We know there's a Christmas hangover or pre-hangover. So
Anthony Barr said it himself. A little Christmas hangover.
Yeah, so let's. It was pretty loud when they played the Saints for the Minneapolis Miracle a couple years ago. So I think we'll be okay.
It is a 3:30 kickoff. Yeah. So people like me will be tailgating at approximately 8 a.m. getting ready for this game.
Fans will be enhanced.
We will be, as Tom Brady once said, lubed up and ready. We'll have our oil changed. Yep. You got to make sure you get to the game. I did not do that last time. I was supposed to go to a Vikings game. Granted, Mother Nature took a whiteout a little too seriously in these parts.
Yeah.
But I think that having this game at home, and that's why it's a little bit of a bummer not getting the 2 seed now, because you look at the 2 seed, it's like, would have been nice to play Seattle and then get San Francisco.
But you know, if the Vikings got the 2 seed, the Packers would have won. You know that they would have.
Yes, they would have won, and they would have had everything.
That's just how life goes.
The powers of the Ultimate Warrior when the planets of the Grimlap system align, and
that would have happened. We all know that. Come on.
I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is quoting the Ultimate Warrior these days, sipping his tea, just like load the spaceship with the rocket fuel.
A bunch of nonsense, yeah.
Load it with Warriors. All right. On that note, let's get to some analysis and predictions. Kind of asked you a little bit about impact on the game, but let's bring them all together. Which player do you think will have the biggest impact on the game Sunday?
I think you got to go with Kirk Cousins, because I think people are he's gonna have the microscope on him. Obviously, playoff Kirk. This game isn't at noon, so people are like, "Oh, he doesn't get to play at noon, so he's not gonna be good." I believe Kirk Cousins has a winning record in primetime since he's been with the Vikings, so that narrative is kind of silly. But because he's got to make an impact by getting the ball probably to other people besides Justin Jefferson, because you would like to assume that the Giants are going to try and take away Justin Jefferson for the most part this game. And there's been a couple times where teams have done that this year, and Kirk's just like he doesn't know where to go, because he's like he starts checking down to CJ Ham, starts throwing tight end screens, starts throwing deep to Adam Thielen, and it's like, no, just get the ball to Hawkinson, KJ Osborne, get the ball to Dalvin Cook. It's going to come down to him getting the ball out with that offensive line that's banged up. So I think Kirk Cousins is the biggest factor in this game, how he plays.
I'm looking at his splits right now, and it's pretty funny. Kirk Cousins in the early window this year, 10-1, 66.2% completion rating. 3,167 yards, which is going to be high because you play most of your games at noon. 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 97.9 quarterback rating. Kirk Cousins in the afternoon, 3 games, 1-2 record. So this would be the 3:30 window we're talking about. 587 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now I will throw this out there, that 2 of those games were Dallas at home and at Green Bay. And those are probably the 2 worst games that they played. I don't think it had anything to do with, oh my God, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo are in the booth. What are we going to do? You know what? Here's the other thing. The one that they won, Green Bay Packers at home, week 1. You know who the announcers were? Kevin Burkhardt, Greg Olson, Aaron Andrews, and Tom Rinaldi. So I don't know. I don't think announcers have an impact. And John Stiegelmeier of the national champion South Dakota Jackrabbits once said, if you're worried about that, that's not the type of player I want. Right. So I think the players that will have the biggest impact on this game are Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. I think this is a game where we're going to need to see a pass rush and make Daniel Jones sweat. Because if you make him sweat, he's going to do dumb stuff. Yep. And if he does dumb stuff, he's going to get the turnovers you need. Zadarius Smith said earlier this week his knee is the best it's felt since October. Danielle Hunter has started coming on. I think Danielle's been in that Kirk Cousins scenario a little bit, where it's kind of like, I'm learning a new role. I'm learning what's good, what's not, and all those things. Kirk Cousins said earlier this week that he wasn't comfortable with the offense until the Detroit game, until after that Lions game, the second one. So, and
The
I mean,
second one.
the stats kind of back it up.
Okay.
Yeah. So he says he's more comfortable with the offense because I believe the Colts game was right after the Detroit game, right? So I mean that makes sense, like because he was like the Terminator in the Colts game, where it's like half his face is blown off, they're just shooting him with bullets, and he's just like doing the Arnold. I've never seen any of those movies, so some Terminator like nerd just like that's not what happened. Shut up! I watch wrestling instead.
Much better.
It's so much better, so much more realistic.
Acting is so much better. Yeah.
I think it's going to come down to that pass rush and that defense. And Luke Braun had a very good point. I was listening to Locked On Vikings this morning. He said, over the last 4 weeks, this is a different defense. They haven't played that soft shell. It's been more man-to-man. They got torched against the Packers. But like you said, there were a lot of things. Zimmer excuses, right? Well, they returned a kickoff for a touchdown. Well, we didn't score at the 1 yard line. Well, we didn't do all this. I think the biggest key is just making the Giants wet themselves as soon as they go to the line of scrimmage. And I think home field advantage and I think a pass rush are the best way to do that. Which player that we're not thinking of could have the biggest impact on the
game? I think on the offensive side of the ball, you got to go Irv Smith Jr. just because he hasn't been around and no one's really the Giants probably aren't going to pay a ton of attention to him, and he's still got big play potential. He's still, especially with more attention being on Hockenson. I think it'd be nice to see how he does as a number 2 tight end. I think he's probably a better fit for that role than the number 1 tight end role. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think Delvin Tomlinson will be a little extra motivated to go 1 against his former team, 2 it's his first playoff game, and 3 he's just been playing very well this year. He's been one of their best pass rushers. So I think he's going to have a big impact on this game as well. So Delvin Tomlinson and Irv Smith Jr. I would like to say a wild card maybe Eric Kendricks, just because he seems to come up with some big plays sometimes in big moments, and I think he might be able to do that this time.
I'm going to go with a group of players to answer this. The special teams. I think that because I think Matt Daniels has done a great job overall with special teams. I think he's gotten the most out of this group, but there are moments where you're just like, what are you doing? Like the hole that Keyshawn Nixon ran through in Green Bay.
Speaking of Jalen Naylor, that was his fault.
Yeah. A lot of guys not in the gaps. And then Greg Joseph. Do not trust at all. I know he hit a 61-yarder. I know, but what happened in Green Bay, what happened in Chicago. We've seen him struggle at US Bank Stadium before. It seems like he's gotten that iron out, but it is Russian roulette every time he runs up for a kick.
I will say,
kicks,
yeah, please. I will say this though. Gary Anderson was perfect, right? 98.
Yes.
And then he missed in the championship game. So
John Madden said himself. He's like, Gary Anderson, by far, Gary Anderson.
So, and when it comes to Vikings kickers, nothing's a guarantee. It doesn't matter if, he could have been perfect all year. We'd still be super nervous with Greg Joseph in the playoffs, no matter what.
Spin the frickin' chamber, Boris. Let's go. Vikings will lose. All right, let's go on to the next one. I'm jumping ahead on the outline, but the Vikings will win Sunday if
they get turnovers. They seem to this year, whenever they've gotten turnovers, they've pretty much won. And the games where they haven't won, they haven't generated turnovers. So it makes a big impact because they are a bend don't break defense. They are playing a little bit more, more press man, more pressure and stuff like that recently. But still, they'd rather give up the yards than the points. And if you're going to do that, then you got to create turnovers. And I believe they created 2 turnovers against the Giants the first time. So they'll be looking to do that again on Sunday. So if they create turnovers and also get points off of those turnovers, that's important as well. Then I think they'll be it'll be easier to get a win.
I think turnovers are going to be big. I think running the ball is going to be big. Like, again, I think that's the best way you neutralize that pass rush is get Dalvin Cook going, get Wink Martindale's defense playing let's make a deal, whether they have to stop the pass or the run. I'm watching Dalvin Cook in this game because I think a lot of the times this year, he's looked like Old Yeller. Then he'll rip off an 80-yard touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
They need consistent runs. They need consistent efforts, and they can't have the breakdowns defensively. You had the Cameron Bynum stuff, where sometimes he just has miscommunication. Hopefully having Harrison Smith in the back end will help. Cameron Dantzler is still dealing with that ankle. I don't think he's 100%. Plus, I don't think he's starting anyway because Duke Shelley seems to have seized that role. I think that the Vikings' number one goal should be maintain a steady rushing game. And again, get that pass rush. Make Daniel Jones wet himself. Make things difficult on Saquon Barkley. That's another player we haven't even mentioned that can make life difficult on the Vikings. I think all those things, they just have to be on their game, and I think they'll win this game. But the Vikings will lose on Sunday if.
On the flip side, they turn the ball over too many times. It seems simple, but in their 4 losses this year, they've turned the ball over 10 times. In their 13 wins, they've turned the ball over 7 times. So for a team that plays close games, turnovers are huge. And a team like the Giants, you can't give a team like the Giants, short field position, easy opportunities to score because a team they've shown that they can take advantage of that this year. So do not turn the ball over. Hang on to the ball, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, and your receivers. Hopefully, Jalen Reagor is not out there. Hopefully, his receivers are on the same page. They seem to be doing much better with that at this point in the year. Was it the Giants game where Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson kind of ran like the same route?
Yeah, because Kevin O'Connell was talking to him, and Adam Thielen wouldn't even like.
Thielen's like,
whatever. I don't want to hear this.
So yeah, just be on the same page. Just it seems so simple, but just don't turn the ball over because in their losses they've turned the ball over multiple times and they lose. So it seems simple, but just hold on to the ball.
Hold on to the ball. Don't turn it over. I say the Vikings will lose this game if they fall into a big hole early. I don't think this is the type of game that you test the whole comeback and magical pixie dust theory or everything. I think they need to go out and they need to step on the Giants immediately because I don't think, I'll straight up say it, I don't think the Giants are as good as their record is.
No.
Like, I don't. I like just looking at this team, it's like Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and you know what? That's a hell of a lot of credit to Brian Daboll, who has done a great job in his first year as head coach. He has done awesome. Like, I will give him that credit. But this team does not concern me as much as like the 49ers do or the Eagles or even the Cowboys. Like, this whole, and I could see the Giants winning. I could see either scenario playing out, but I think that the Vikings have to keep this game close. And they keep this game close, I think they'll have a shot to win this game, but you can definitely lose it in the first couple of quarters, and that's what I'm going with.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the Giants, much earlier in the podcast, the Giants have actually played in more one-score games than the Vikings, 13 compared to 11. So, history would say that this game's going to be close, and if that's the case, then it favors the Vikings. So I like their chances. It's funny, a lot of the talking points that we've been saying about the Giants, like a lot of the New York media, a lot of the national media has been saying about the Vikings, how like they're not as good as their record. Kirk Cousins in playoff time and prime time, he chokes. In clutch situations, he's not good. And then you look at the Giants, and they're struggling the second half of the year. Daniel Jones, he's not really that great in one-score games. There's been some quarterback rankings that have been released recently by like national pundits or whatever that have Daniel Jones ahead of Kirk Cousins, and it's like, okay, whatever.
That since you brought this up and I have this on file, I'm going to run through them because I did a little bit digging on the New York Post, which likes to stir the pot. I mean, Twins fans are very.
It's basically a tabloid.
Yeah, it's basically a tabloid. This is just a couple of articles that I pulled on Monday, just doing something for Bring Me the News. And the quotes in there are pretty interesting. So the Giants, with a meaningless for them game against the Eagles, this is by Steve Serby of the New York Post, by the way. So the Giants, with a meaningless for them game against the Eagles to finish out the regular season, are peaking. Again, this is a team that is 2-5-1 in their last 8 games. Yeah. Daniel Jones is playing the best quarterback of his career. Okay. They stood toe-to-toe with the Vikings at US Bank Stadium on Christmas Eve. Okay. And they will be fueled with self-belief that they can beat them in a rematch, especially with the secondary this time that will include Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson to better contain all-world wide receiver Justin Jefferson and tight end TJ Hawkinson. It does not matter who Justin Jefferson is going against. Unless Jair Alexander has like 4 defensive backs behind him. Mm-hmm. Like, it does not matter. Justin Jefferson is going to get his. I don't care if Deion Sanders rips off the Coach Prime stuff and throws on a Giants jersey and tries to stop Justin Jefferson. He is getting his. He went on to talk about the offensive line. Then they went on and talked about experience. And this was Mike Vaccaro. The Giants essentially had a vacation week and still managed to bring some of the feel-good vibes home with them up the turnpike. That's been the theme all year. Sounds pretty familiar. They've lost 7 games, but almost always managed to sow seeds of hope, even if the scoreboard disagreed. It has bred a team that must be brimming with confidence as the NFL's marquee season begins.
You sure Peter Bukowski didn't write that?
Yeah, fraudulenta.
Vibes.
The Giants left Minneapolis believing that they beat themselves more than the Vikings beat them. Okay. A Daniel Bellinger fumble, a Jones interception, a blocked punt, a third down drop by Richie James that is, and it took a walk-off 61-yard field goal by Greg Joseph to beat them. Get the PowerPoint. That's all I have to say. Then they went on to say, for what it's worth, the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl championship. Later in the article, they said next weekend, the Vikings will jump on an airplane trip to Minneapolis in the franchise's first playoff game in more than 2,100 days.
What about the Giants?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
2,100 days.
Okay.
They have not been in a playoff game since 2016 when Odell Beckham and the rest of them decided to hop on a boat before they went and played the Packers. Yeah. You can be sure the Vikings, given True Serum, would have preferred to see someone else on the other side of the field next week at US Bank Stadium, given the way last time shook out.
What? They won.
They won.
The Giants had the lead for less than 10 minutes in that game. I keep seeing like a lot of the arguments like they won on a last second field goal. It's like they were winning like the whole game.
Yeah.
It was winning or tied for more than 80% of the game. So the fact that
the Giants are a good opponent. I'm not slamming them. I don't think, like, if we're talking predictions, I'll go first. Vikings 24, Giants 22. I think it'll be close. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. No. It's going to be one of those games where we're kind of, hyperventilating at the end, but I think that the Vikings will come out on top because I think they are the better team.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be close, but like talking about this through the podcast, I have some different feelings. So I'm going to go not a blowout, but I'm going to go with like 30-21. I think the Vikings are going to that's a blowout for them this year. I think they're going to, like you said, they're not going to be rotating guys out. Everyone's going to be on the field, for all the snaps. Harrison Smith's going to be out there. Darius Smith, Danielle Hunter, all those guys are going to be on the field for most of the game. So I think the Vikings are going to get out to a lead early, and it's just not really going to be that close. I think the Vikings will use this. I think Kevin O'Connell's been waiting for this game to like shut everybody up. I don't think he's been doing a whole lot the last few weeks as far as like playbook wise, health wise. I think he's just been getting ready for this opening round game for longer than we think. And I think he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve on Sunday.
remember the last time that Kevin O'Connell kind of had a preseason kind of vibe for a couple of weeks, and then that week 1 hit against the Packers, and they ran him off the damn field.
Yep.
That could happen on Sunday.
Yep.
Just saying.
Yep.
And by the way, enjoy this. Enjoy this. Like, it's been, 3 years since we've had playoff football, and like 5 since we've been like, well, we realistically have a chance to like win and make a run. So I'm excited.
6 since a home playoff game.
Exactly. And I was there because there's a little thing called the Minneapolis Miracle.
It's a little thing. Yeah.
I think I still got the sweat-stained rally towel from in one of the boxes, but it's going to be fun. But anyway, that is all the time we have for the Viking Age podcast today. We do this every Monday and Thursday right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. So like, comment, share, subscribe so you never miss a new video. And if you do miss us, we got you covered in audio form with the podcast on Apple and Spotify. I am Chris Schad. He is Adam Patrick. And we will talk to you on Monday, hopefully with another Viking victory right here on the Viking Age podcast.